and NBA seasons in Phoenix. He's a 4-time NBA All-Star, 2-time All-NBA selection, and a 2-time Olympic gold medalist for Team USA. Last season, he became the Suns' franchise leader in points scored. The Thunder and Chet Holmgren have agreed to a fully guaranteed 5-year max rookie contract extension that could reach $250 million.
Save big when you bundle auto and home, renters, or condo with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Now there's a new way to take charge of your blood sugar. Introducing new Garlic Healthy Blood Sugar Formula from the makers of the nation's best-selling garlic supplement. New Garlic helps maintain healthy blood sugar levels with clinically supported levels of garlic, plus a custom blend of vitamins and minerals. And it's odor-free. Take charge of your blood sugar with new Garlic Healthy Blood Sugar Formula. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Use as directed.
Progressive's Auto Quote Explorer lets you easily compare direct rates from different insurance companies, so you can be confident you're getting the right one, even if it's not with Progressive. Way more confident than you were when you bought that TV in a parking lot. It just happened to not come in a box or include a remote. And when you finally managed to turn it on, all it displayed was the menu of Grumpy's Tacos. So use Progressive's Auto Quote Explorer and be confident you're getting insurance that's right for you. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
If you want to be an alpha,
you've got to get the winning edge.
It's kind of a necessary ingredient if you want to lead the pack. So mark your territory
with the winning edge.
You're in the big leagues. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on FFC, that's Football Full Circle. All a part of the SportsGrid Radio Network and Sirius XM Channel 159. He is Scott Wetzel. I am Ben Stevens. Together for the next hour up until 1 p.m. Eastern. Here as we continue to count down to football. The LA Chargers send their rookies to training camp on Saturday, followed by the Detroit Lions a few days after that. The vets for both teams report by the end of next weekend, as those two teams will be the first in action at the end of this month. A preseason game in July, the Hall of Fame game in Canton, Ohio. Just a few days away, at least, from seeing some players, Scott, on the practice turf. But it is that quiet juncture, fully in summer break in the NFL offseason. Today, our focus is going to be on playoff teams from a year ago and who we expect to be back in the postseason in 2025, and if there are any surprises that we are going to see this upcoming NFL campaign.
Yeah, this really is the dog days of summer, right? We've had the draft, we've had the schedule release, we've broken down the schedules, over-unders, we have been out for how long? 2, 3, 4 months, actually, believe it or not. Used to be you had to wait forever to get those things out, but now they're out basically 24/7. So that's been out. Training camp doesn't start, as you mentioned, for a couple of weeks. So the next week or two really is kind of the dog days, and you kind of pick and choose your spots there and try and find some things to bet on, or at least discuss betting on maybe a month or two down the line. So we'll have some fun today. We'll have some fun over the next couple of weeks, just the same.
It is a football month here in July. It felt a little bit closer to football this week. Big 12 Media Days in Frisco, Texas, just outside of Dallas, coming to a close yesterday afternoon. We heard from more head coaches around the Big 12 Conference. Mike Gundy entering year number 21 at Oklahoma State, needing a bounce back for the Pokes after a 3-win season last year and losing all 9 conference tilts. And Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, at the podium yesterday as well, still at the helm of his Colorado program in Boulder, but for the first time, leading the Buffs without his son, Shedeur Sanders, at the quarterback spot, or Travis Hunter, our reigning Heisman Trophy winner. What Deion Sanders had to say about his health, CU football moving forward this season, and just the future of college football as well, in terms of the finances, salary caps, and all of that now in the rev share era. We'll talk about a little bit later on in the show. Scott, All week long on the early line here on the Sports Grid Network, we've been doing a playoff profile of the 7 teams from each conference, the 14 in total that made the postseason last year around the National Football League. We went in reverse order, working our way up from the wild card standings to our divisional champs, and we culminated it today with the 1 seeds in each conference. I do like the conversation around the wild card teams. And as we start in the AFC, those 3 wild card teams last year, the Chargers were the top wild card team, the 5 seed. Again, they send their rookies to training camp in just about 48 hours. The 6 seed in the AFC, the Pittsburgh Steelers, earning a 4th playoff berth in 5 years. In the Denver Broncos, much to the surprise of many, year 2 under Sean Payton, rookie campaign for his quarterback Bo Nix, a preseason win total, Scott, end mile high of 5.5 that they well surpassed, finishing with a 10-7 record and a playoff berth. Scott, if you had to highlight one of those 3 wild card teams in the AFC from a season ago that you would expect to miss the playoffs this time around, which team would that be?
All right, it's a little bit of a surprise because I think most people would probably throw Pittsburgh at you, right? I'm going to go Denver, Ben. I think I'd be shocked. Out of all the 6 wildcard teams, including the NFC, the one that stood out to me as far as being the least likely not to make it would be San Diego. If the or LA, excuse me. If the Chargers don't make it, with Herbert and Harbaugh, I'd really be surprised. So pecking order would be AFC, Chargers last, then Pittsburgh. But, Denver is the one, with teams kind of come out of nowhere. Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh, right? How many years? 18 straight years of a winning record or non-losing record for Mike Tomlin. So, they're going to be there in the end when push comes to shove, unless they, for whatever reason, fall off a cliff. And I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. So I'll go Denver just because Bo Nix was so good out of the blue. Teams that we've seen like that, have last-place schedules or third-place schedules. And then now all of a sudden teams are getting up for them versus last year that they poo-poo when Denver comes to town, or you go to Denver, we can beat them. Rookie quarterback surprised a lot of teams, won some close games. Nix was good. He really, no denying it. His numbers were there. It wasn't like they were winning games, 14-10, and he was just the facilitator. But I think Denver, like I said, you go from being the hunter to the huntee. It's just a little different. So I'll say Broncos don't make the playoffs this year. Tough division. Raiders are going to be a little bit better as well. Chiefs are the Chiefs. So I think they have the toughest road to the postseason.
Yeah, Broncos got beat bad in Buffalo 31-7 in that wild card game against the Bills. It was the 10th time, Scott, in the 18 games that Denver played in total, 17 regular season, 18 with that playoff contest. They were booked as an underdog. So booked as a dog in a majority of their games, especially early on. The odds started to catch up, I would say, about Denver week 8, week 9, and then they started to be booked as a favorite. The Broncos is a favorite last year, lights out. But when you are an underdog, and that's the expectation early, and then you start to be booked more frequently as a favorite, it's against other bad teams, or at least those perceived bad teams a year ago. The Broncos had a 5.5 win total entering 2024 with a rookie quarterback at the helm and Sean Payton in his second year in Denver, but many questions, of course, to be answered. I think there's a lot to like with the Broncos. Their win total 9.5. The under has a slight bit of juice at minus 130. And heck, if the odds makers are correct, and Denver even goes slightly under at 9-8, going to be difficult to make the postseason in the competitive AFC with that mark. You think double-digit wins, 10 or more wins is probably that magic number that you need at least to be in playoff contention. I wouldn't be surprised, Scott, for the Broncos to be 9-8 and miss out on the playoffs. I don't think Denver's about to be 6-11 or 7-10 this year, but maybe as that team to fall out of the postseason picture. What I do find interesting, though, Scott, is that minus 114 price on Denver to make the AFC playoffs. Once again, it is the 7th best price. The Steelers actually have the 8th best number at plus 140. And so the natural thought would then, as you alluded to, be Pittsburgh being that wild card team from a season ago, missing out on the postseason this time around. And I think we have our questions about Aaron Rodgers being able to guide the Steelers to anything more than just a playoff berth, which Pittsburgh has seen multiple times in the tail end of the Big Ben era with quarterbacks like Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph at the helm. So the idea that Aaron Rodgers is there and they could have a winning record and be a playoff team, not overly surprising in that notion. But it's the idea, Scott, not Aaron Rodgers getting Pittsburgh to the postseason. It's Aaron Rodgers getting the Steelers to win a playoff game, something that has eluded that franchise since 2016.
Yeah, and you look at their schedule, Ben, the gauntlet to close out the season for them is just like, wow, who set this up, right? Let's just say things go well for Aaron Rodgers and Pittsburgh gets off to a good start like they're going to have to. They close out the year with Buffalo, at Baltimore, Miami, at Detroit, at rival Cleveland, Baltimore again. I mean, good luck. They would have to have, if in those 6 games, what are they realistically going to go? 2-4? I mean, I don't think they're beating Buffalo even at home. I don't think they're beating Baltimore on the road. Maybe they beat Miami at home. I doubt they're beating Detroit. Maybe they beat Cleveland, and then Baltimore again at home. Hopefully for them, maybe Baltimore's playing for nothing. But the Ravens would love to knock the Steelers off the perch, right? Big rivals. 3-3 at best. So that means if you eliminate the 3-3, and if your goal is 10-7, realistically, they would have to go 7-4 at all those other games. I don't doubt. Like I said, I have Denver number 1, but I wouldn't be surprised at all with Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh is a close second on my list of who's not going to make it again this year.
Yeah, Scott, you look at those final 6 games, you mentioned the teams, you mentioned the opponents, you mentioned where they are in terms of on the road or at home. Certainly an underdog in 4 of those 6. Plenty more to come on Football Full Circle next.
4 out of 5 scientists agree it's smarter to be on SportsGrid. And we're pretty sure that one scientist is still a virgin.
He just gives that vibe.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
With your news flash, I'm Trey Westerberg. This update brought to you by Fidelity. President Donald Trump's administration sued the California Department of Education for allowing transgender girls to compete on girls' sports teams, alleging the policy violates federal law. The lawsuit filed by the Justice Department says California's transgender athlete policies violate Title IX. The department says California's rules, quote, are not only illegal and unfair, but also demeaning, signaling to girls that their opportunities and achievements are secondary to accommodating boys. The U.S. is having its worst year for measles spread in more than 3 decades, with a total of 1,288 cases nationally and another 6 months to go in 2025. The CDC said that the national case count surpassed 2019 when there were 1,274 cases for the year, and the country almost lost its status as having eliminated the vaccine-preventable illness. That could happen this year if the virus has nonstop spread for 12 months. I'm Trey Westerberg with your news flash.
Now there's a new way to take charge of your blood sugar. Introducing new Garlic Healthy Blood Sugar Formula from the makers of the nation's best-selling garlic supplement. New Garlic helps maintain healthy blood sugar levels with clinically supported levels of garlic, plus a custom blend of vitamins and minerals. And it's odor-free. Take charge of your blood sugar with New Garlic Healthy Blood Sugar Formula. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Use as directed.
Progressive knows when you're in your RV, you're already on vacation. That's when you become Vacation You, who just camped where there's absolutely no shade. Even though regular you burns easily. In fact, Vacation You burns too, but is too stubborn to admit it, which is why regular you gets in trouble at the dermatologist, because Vacation You doesn't do doctors. So bundle your RV with your home or auto policy and earn an automatic discount from Progressive. And spend the savings on the both of you. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers. Not available in all states or situations.
There's something you should know and always remember.
SportsGrid does not increase luck.
We're your unfair advantage for the latest sports gaming information. If you're looking for luck,
go find a horseshoe.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Teams that reached the playoffs a year ago, will they do the same in 2025? We're talking about some of those wild card teams. We started in the AFC. Now maybe we lend our attention to the NFC. Scott, it was a hotly contested wild card race in the NFC. Even the wild card teams, everybody stacked up at least 11 wins. That includes the top wild card team from a year ago in the NFC. Of course, the 14-win Minnesota Vikings, who had the chance in week number 18, regular season finale, game 272 of 272 to knock off the Detroit Lions, win the division, and earn that number 1 overall seed. Sam Darnold kind of turned back into a pumpkin, as we saw in the playoffs as well. Minnesota was the top wild card team. The 6th seed was the rookie, Jaden Daniels, and his Commanders, winning 12 games in 2024. Even the Packers, the final of our 3 wild card teams in the NFC from a season ago, 11-6. Scott, when you look at those 3 teams, the wild card spots from a year ago in the NFC, if you had to choose one, who's most likely to miss out on the postseason in 2025?
I was going to say, clarify the question, because if the question is which teams won't be a wild card team again this year, I can give you 2, but not because they're not going to be in the postseason. It's because they actually could win the division in Washington and Green Bay, right? Especially with that, goofy stat with the NFC East. So if you're asking then, okay, which team is not going to be in the postseason? It's got to be Minnesota, right? That's a no-brainer. Could I see Washington fall back to the pack, kind of like Denver? Yeah, but I have more confidence in Washington and Jaden Daniels kind of continuing the path they did last year than I do Denver maybe taking a step back a little bit. So it's got to be the Vikings, new quarterback, right? Who knows what you're going to get out of J.J. McCarthy. They should be good. You flip a coin, right? You could say, listen, if they were this good with Sam Darnold, why can't they be this good with J.J. McCarthy? Or you say, no, Sam Darnold is gone, and now you're bringing in a rookie quarterback. Not just any quarterback. At least Sam Darnold had some experience. You're expecting a rookie to kind of pick up the torch and take the team, further than what it got last year. So Vikings, to me, would be the obvious one.
Yeah, I would agree, Scott. It's a minus 106 price on Minnesota to reach the postseason. They are slightly in minus money, although you could look at the other side and think that is more likely to miss out on the playoffs. But even if you see that minus 106 number, still, the Vikings have the 8th best price around that conference to get to the postseason. Again, I have a lot of questions about J.J. McCarthy. Because J.J. McCarthy, although Minnesota clearly believes in him, drafting him 10th overall in 2024, and although his win-loss record and the accolades that he stacked up during his illustrious college career at Michigan, 27-1, the win-loss record as a starter, the best in FBS history in the last half century of anybody that started at least 25 games, ended his career as a Rose Bowl MVP, and of course, more importantly, a national champion. But it wasn't necessarily J.J. McCarthy, the Heisman frontrunner, throwing for 275 yards and 3 touchdowns to lead a high-powered Michigan offense each and every week. It was one of the best Michigan defenses in the country and an incredibly stout running game led by Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. There is a lot of projection still, Scott, on J.J. McCarthy in terms of maybe proven production that you might see on a top 10 pick. Minnesota believes in him wholeheartedly. He looked really good in the preseason game that he played before he suffered that torn meniscus at some point during that game, and they found it later that week. $188 through the air, 2 touchdowns, an interception. Looked really stout in that performance. But for me, Scott, there's still a lot of belief buying into the Vikings this year that J.J. McCarthy will be able to replicate even what Sam Darnold was able to produce last year, and the Vikings are going to be a 10, 11, 12-win football team, earning a playoff spot once again.
Yeah. This is a strange team, Ben, because he may be able to put up those numbers. Let's go positive on this and say, yep, he could put up Sam Darnold numbers. That's not a guarantee for this Viking team. You look at the numbers Kirk Cousins put up, right? I mean, they were pretty good numbers. They were pretty successful. How many times did they win their division with Kirk Cousins? 1 time. You're looking at 8-7, 10-6, pretty good, but that was second place. 7-9, 8-9, the 13-4, they did win the 1 time, and then 7-10. So even if he answers J.J. McCarthy, the Sam Darnold and Kenny produced, that's not a guarantee. You got to go back to Case Keenum the last time the Vikings were 13-3 and won the division. So it's, we want to label it all. Will this Viking team be successful based on their quarterback play? Recent history anyway, with Zimmer and O'Connell as their head coach, they've had good quarterback play. They still, though, haven't been over the top successful.
Right. And it's a great point, Scott, because, again, I might have some questions about the individual quarterback himself, J.J. McCarthy, but sometimes it's not even the prospect or the player. It's the situation they find themselves in. And if I were to pick a place as a young quarterback in my de facto rookie year that I would like to play, it would be with Justin Jefferson as my top target, Jordan Addison on the other side, a really solid tight end in TJ Hawkinson. Aaron Jones, despite being a vet, still looks rejuvenated there in Minneapolis, with the offensive mastermind that is Kevin O'Connell kind of directing and calling the plays for me and planning out my game plan each and every week. J.J. McCarthy finds himself in a spectacular situation to excel, Scott, from the very start.
Yeah, he really does. I mean, you can't get better weapons realistically than that, right? Yeah. But again, he puts up the numbers, but then the defense all of a sudden is going to go back to being lousy. Or this franchise just seems like jinxed. I mean, go back to the 4 Super Bowl losses. I mean, they've had really good players, really good, halfway decent quarterbacks in Kirk Cousins. Well, they finished under 500 just as many times as they did over 500 with this team. And now you're in a division in which, Green Bay is good. Detroit Lions are good. And now the Bears are expected to be a little bit better. So who's finishing in last place in that division, if you ask me? Yeah. I'd probably tell you the Vikings, believe it or not, with all that talent. Something's just not, clicking for Minnesota with this group for whatever reason. There's always something, whether it's an injury, whether defense doesn't play well. There's just always something, and I don't think this year is going to be any different. I don't think they get back into the postseason.
Yeah, 8.5 the win total for the Vikings, Scott. The over has the hefty juice at -150. The Bears also 8.5 win total. Under has pretty hefty juice. But even to finish last in that division, you could be 8-9 or even, heck, have a winning record. It's going to be that tough in the NFC North. More on Football Full Circle next.
There's smart.
And there's not smart.
Not smart is hope as a strategy. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Keep it here.
And win. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
1934 National League pitcher Carl Hubbell strikes out Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Jimmy Fox, Al Simmons, and Joe Cronin for an All-Star Game record for consecutive strikeouts. Hubbell won 253 games in his career and won 20 games for 5 consecutive seasons while pitching for the New York Giants. For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
New research at the University of Bern, Switzerland suggests artificial intelligence superior to humans at suggesting appropriate behavior in emotionally charged situations.
I suggest you put down the duck.
Unemotional, non-human AI trained on psychological research dispassionately diagnoses emotionally charged situations in real time, assessing and diffusing the chance of a dangerous outcome.
You might be calmer if your wife stopped tickling you.
One step closer to AI with actual emotional intelligence.
Next time, let go of the bowling ball.
Follow me at Capalbo on X and stay tuned to the Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
Carver and Lisi.
Is he safe or is he out?
They haven't made the call yet.
How many angles?
Say, do one.
I knew you were talking it down, too. I knew it.
How was I talking it down?
You were hoping the guy. I saw it. You got a smirk on your face. You were hoping.
Joe, why do you think that I'm trying to talk down your stuff? I don't get that about you. Why do you do that?
It's Carver and Lisi with Mike Carver and Joe Lisi. Weekdays 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on the SportsGrid Radio Network. There comes a point when the chips are down.
To coin a phrase.
When the only thing you can do is stop and wait. Do you want to face that moment prepared?
Or rely on luck?
Get the winning edge.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, looking at last year's playoff teams, and will they at least be able to do that for an encore in 2025? Scott, we have gone through the wild card teams, the 3 from the AFC, the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Steelers. The 3 from the NFC, the Vikings, the Packers, and the Commanders. And we have selected and discussed the teams that we find least likely to return to the postseason. I agree with you and what you said. Broncos in the AFC, Vikings in the NFC, which would then allow a team that missed out on the postseason to either get back or pull a surprise and get there for the first time in a while. We'll go back to the AFC to begin, Scott. If you had to highlight a team that missed out on the playoffs last year that you expect to be a playoff team come 2025, who comes top of mind?
Yeah, this is a no-brainer as well, right? It's got to be Cincinnati. Sometimes you forget they didn't make the playoffs last year, but they didn't, obviously. So they would be the number one. With their schedule the way it is, little chip on their shoulder. They got all these contract issues that were hanging over their head last year with their wide receivers. They're all settled except for Richardson, the defensive player. But I imagine that's going to get done sooner or later. I would think this team would be so ticked off. I think the coach, his job is probably on the line as well. So mix it all in. You don't know what you're getting out of Pittsburgh. Cleveland really is not going to be that good. That division, all of a sudden, you went from one of the toughest by far last year to, maybe not that bad of a division. So I like Cincinnati to make the playoffs, if not win the division this season.
So, Scott, I've been watching that quarterback series on Netflix we have discussed a few times this week. Joe Burrow, one of the focuses from last season. And you're watching, you're like, man, the Bengals stunk last year. Missed out on the playoffs, didn't live up to expectation. And you almost forget they had a winning record. They ended up being 9-8. They missed out on the playoffs, but they were still above 500. Win total for Cincy this year is 9.5, and the over has the juice. 5 years in the NFL now for Joe Burrow. His rookie year came on strong, only played 10 games, season-ending torn ACL. His second year, back and fully healthy. Bengals win the NFC, come oh so close in Super Bowl 56 in LA against the LA Rams. Following year, they get back to the AFC Championship game, losing in OT to the Kansas City Chiefs. And then the year after that, 2023, Joe Burrow plays 10 games, injures his wrist, out for the remainder of the season. In 2024, they get off to the 0-3 start, fight their way back because of a porous defense and with the winning record. And again, miss out, though, on the postseason. Again, when Joe Burrow has been healthy, the Bengals are at least a winning football team. And if we start with that threshold and kind of that floor, I'll go over 9.5 for Cincinnati at -120. You got a new defensive coordinator in Al Golden, who's got a lot to figure out right now. But ultimately, you hope, if you are a Bengals backer, that Trey Hendrickson gets his new deal, that the first-round draft pick, Shamar Stewart, finds what he needs in that contract to sign the dotted line and play for Cincinnati. And, Scott, the defense finished bottom 10 in both scoring and yards. That would be points and yards allowed per game. If they're even slightly better than that, to be a playoff team, they can do it, right? Maybe to not be a Super Bowl champion, they probably have to be better than average in the NFL defensively next year. But I think even just to be a playoff team, to get to 10 wins, to earn a wild card spot, heck, maybe even contend for a divisional crown in the AFC North, if the defense is average or slightly above average in its ranks next season with all the offensive firepower, the Bengals are no doubt that team that missed out on the playoffs a year ago that should be back.
Yeah. The three of the first four draft choices, were defensive players. You get Hendrickson under the fold, like I think they will eventually. And the AFC has come back to the pack a little bit here, right? It used to be, okay, it was Buffalo and Miami and all these teams. I don't know what you're going to get out of my Dolphins. It's really just Buffalo. Pittsburgh's falling back. Cleveland stinks. Indianapolis, Jacksonville, Tennessee. You might get a flyer out of that, but that's basically a one-horse division. The AFC West is halfway decent, but you don't have the 6 or 7, 8 teams like we've had heading into the season, seemingly in the AFC. So now I think 10-7 definitely will get it. I like their over. But I'm stubborn with this stuff, and I've been on Cincinnati the last really since their Super Bowl year. Yeah. I've been buying into Joey P. I'm in a position to get burned once again if things fall apart, but I still say that's one of the most talented teams. We've seen them beat Kansas City, the one thing they have over Buffalo and Baltimore, so I like Cincinnati.
No doubt about it. The Bengals probably should not start 0-2, and certainly not 0-3, which is what they have done each of the previous 3 years. They play on the road at Cleveland to start. Got to win that one. More on FFC up next.
The
The winning edge.
You've got it.
But not everybody has it, because not everybody listens to us.
But we're working on that.
This is the Sports Grid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the Sports Grid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Baseball Wednesday, the Dodgers fell 3-2 in 10 innings on the road against Milwaukee. The NOS leaders have now lost 6 in a row. Their lead atop the division down to 5 games over second place San Francisco. Third place San Diego now 6 games out. The Blue Jays finally lost. They fell 2-1 in Chicago against the White Sox. The result snapped a 10-game winning streak for Toronto, their longest win streak since 2015. They still lead the American League East by 2.5 games over the Yankees. The Phillies shut out the Giants 13-0. Justin Verlander 0-7 on the season. He went 6 full and gave up 2 runs on 7 hits with 7 strikeouts. In Detroit, the Rays beat the Tigers 7-3. The Red Sox pounded the Rockies 10-2. The Yankees beat the Mariners 9-6. Jazz Chisholm homered twice.
Save big when you bundle auto and home, renters, or condo with Progressive. That's the Sports Grid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
This summer with Kohl's, you can rack up the compliments. Like, where'd you get that dress? Tell me all your makeup secrets. Or, ooh, my husband needs that polo in every color. Because Kohl's has what you need. Cute dresses, Sephora essentials, stylish polos, comfy kids clothes, and more. Plus, take 20% off some of your faves. Yep, cue the compliments with Kohl's. Select styles, some exclusions apply. Offer ends July 20th. Coupons and Kohl's Cash do not apply to Sephora. See store or Kohls.com for details.
You gotta dip your chicken strips. Hey, this is Kiani.
And this is Tabitha.
And a little thing we love about Chick-fil-A chicken strips
is all the different sauces we can dip them in. I like to line up all my favorite sauces so that in every bite I have a different flavor. Then with the tenderness of the chicken, the juiciness of it, it's all there.
And for me, I like to mix my sauces so I get a little tang and I get a little sweetness all in one bite.
That's what makes it for me. Like, that's what does it for me.
That's what I'm saying.
It's the summer of Chick-fil-A chicken strips and sauces. Order now on the Chick-fil-A app. Real guests paid for their testimonials.
You're listening to Sports Grid.
Spreading the winning edge far and wide.
Terrestrial, internet, TV, satellite, and don't forget our mobile app.
Face it.
The winning edge is everywhere.
Somewhere there's a squirrel frustrated he can't get a phone.
This is the Sports Grid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Playoff teams from a year ago, and now the playoff teams that weren't in 2024 that could be once again in 2025. As we discussed before the break, the Cincinnati Bengals are a clear place to look. In fact, Scott, as we shared in terms of some of those make playoff prices, the Steelers were a playoff team last year, but have a plus 140 price to see it this year, 8th best number, meaning the Bengals at minus 152 actually have the 4th best price to make the playoffs in front of the Texans, who are the favorites to win the AFC South, the Chargers and the Broncos, 2 wild card teams from a year ago. If we were to keep it in the AFC and talk about teams that missed out on the postseason a year ago that might be a playoff contender in 2025, Bengals certainly likely, the odds makers agree. But each and every NFL season, Scott, we know there is a surprise. The Broncos last year could qualify. 5.5 the preseason win total, earned that 10-win record, and were the 7th seed in the AFC playoffs. If you had to point to a potentially surprising team in 2025, who might that be in the AFC?
I'd go Jacksonville. You know, new head coach. I like what their wide receivers have. The backfield is halfway decent. I'm not the biggest Trevor Lawrence fan, never have been. Even in college, I really didn't think he was that great. I mean, the talk about him being the greatest quarterback prospect ever from people was just like, you got to be kidding me. So he has not been great, but he did take him to the postseason a couple of years ago. They've been through some head coaches here. It hasn't worked out, but maybe, just maybe, if there was a team that really was just flying under the radar, they got that goofy schedule playing over in Europe, 5,000 games. I don't like that either. It's not situated well for them to be successful, but that's the one where I kind of like what they're doing there. They brought in a quarterback's coach. Maybe he could turn things around with Trevor, playing in an easy division. You have 6 games that are all going to be winnable, even the game at Houston. For Jacksonville, it can be winnable. Their defense is halfway decent when it wants to be. I think just things went off the railing last year for them. So I don't think they're a 4-13 team. I think they're much better than that. So that would be the team. But I think Jacksonville, if you want to go deep, And to me, it wouldn't be that big of a surprise.
Right. And there was a couple of years ago after Trevor Lawrence's second year when they pulled off that dramatic comeback to win the AFC South, and then an even more dramatic comeback in the opening round against the LA Chargers, trailing 27-zip. They come all the way back to win that playoff game. Jacksonville was the hot team. And in 2023, they got off to an 8-3 start before Trevor Lawrence got banged up. They stumbled down the stretch, allowing the Texans to come all the way back to win that division. And now we know that Houston has won it for a second consecutive year. Scott, I think it's interesting when you look at Jacksonville, because I agree. I believe they could be that surprise team in the AFC as well. The plus 184 price on the Jags to make the playoffs, it's a plus 300 number on Jacksonville to win the AFC South. Now, is there a world that because of the easy division, you've got the divisional champs, the Texans at 11-6, and the divisional runner-ups, the Jags at 10-7, and just based on overall record, they earn a wild card spot? Absolutely. More than likely, though, I think out of the AFC South, we're going to get one team in the postseason, and it is that divisional winner. So I think that plus 300 price on Jacksonville to win the division might be a good way to look if you think the Jags will be back under Liam Cohen, who has to reignite the career of Trevor Lawrence first and foremost in 2025.
Yeah, and if you look at their, listen, I'm sure Houston's going to have a similar one, but Houston's got a first-place schedule, and Jacksonville's got a third-place schedule. You look at their schedule, Ben, it's not bad. There's no Philadelphia, there's no Detroit, there's no Baltimore. They do play at Cincinnati. They play at San Fran, and they got Kansas City at home. But other than that, you look at all the big, teams. It's not on. There's no Buffalo on there. It's not really a daunting schedule. It really isn't. So if they make the progress, off the field, and you can make the progress with that schedule on the field. They got the extra home game, as all AFC teams obviously do. But that's not again, they play 2 over in Europe, but there's only like a half a dozen traditional road games. So it is set up for them. Tough start to the season, though. That's about the only thing. You look at their schedule, it's like, okay, you start with Carolina at home. That's not bad. But then it's at Cincinnati, Houston, San Fran, Kansas City. But really after that, it's Arizona. It's the Jets, obviously Tennessee and Indianapolis twice. It really, if you could survive those first 5 weeks, even get out of there 2-3 is not the worst thing in the world for them. Just don't go 1-4, God forbid 0-5. And if you could go even 3-2, then you're set up to win that division.
Yeah, and this strength of schedule number I'm about to reference from Warren Sharp is based on projected win totals, rest advantages, home field advantages, the numbers that are used, of course, to set these lines each and every week. But normally, Scott, when you're going up and down the list of first being the easiest, 32nd being the most difficult around the NFL, it should not be surprising that teams from the same division are generally in the same ballpark. Could there be a 3, 4, or 5 spot gap? No doubt. But for the most part, because you are playing those teams more than anybody else, each opponent twice, 6 divisional games a year, that you're going to be in the same general vicinity. To reference the point you just made, based on Warren Sharp's numbers of projected strength of schedule on projected win totals of opponents and those advantages used, travel, rest, home field, road, whatever it might be, to set the lines, the Jags have the 6th easiest schedule around the NFL. And because the Texans are playing that first place schedule and have some of that notoriety, Houston has the 8th most difficult, 25 of 32. That is a large gap between two teams that have the 2 best prices to win the AFC South.
That is surprising, because not only do they obviously play this in the same division, but then they're also playing the same division outside. So, you have, what is that? That's 7 games plus the 10 games of each having the same schedule. So to be that different, that's what happened when you're on prime time and you're on Monday, and then you got to go from Sunday to Thursday a few more times. And if you're a bad team, you're not on that schedule, right? So you don't have those different difficulties. So that's all factored into that schedule. So that's not bad. If you like Jacksonville, I wouldn't just put money on them to get in as a wild card team. If you were going to make the bet, I would put a little bit of aside, whatever it's going to be, take a percentage of that and say that they'd win the division. Because with that schedule and that advantage, that's pretty good.
Yeah, no doubt about it for Jacksonville. Again, that plus 300 price to win the AFC South, around a plus 184 number just to make the playoffs. The only other surprise team, Scott, that I would mention in the AFC. Well, maybe perhaps two. Both have a win total of 7.5. The over for one, the under for the other. The Patriots win total of 7.5 is getting bought a ton this offseason. It's now minus 170 to the over in Mike Vrabel's first year. There's optimism with Drake May. The defense was pretty stout. You bring in a Vrabel, defensive-minded head coach who has had success in his 6 years as the head man in Tennessee. Some people believing that also playing in the AFC East outside of the Bills, not the most difficult. The Patriots can certainly make up some ground. Back-to-back 4-win seasons, of course, not the standard in Foxborough. And they're playing in a much more difficult division. And I'm not saying I expect them to be a playoff team, but one of those surprise teams that you're like, whoa, it's week 11 and this team's in the wild card race. I'd also keep an eye on the Las Vegas Raiders. Geno Smith provides some reliability at the quarterback spot. Of course, we know Pete Carroll's success. He's only had one season with fewer than 7 wins in his NFL head coaching career. It was his very first back in 1994 with the New York Jets, that lone year leading Gang Green. And Scott, they do have a decent defense, at least up front. Max Crosby, Christian Wilkin, to name a few. And we'll see what Ashton Genty can now do in Chip Kelly's offensive scheme. Much more difficult division in the AFC West. But if Las Vegas was at least a thorn in some sides throughout the AFC this season, I wouldn't be overly shocked.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I tell you, those AFC West games are just going to be a war, right? They've taken over from the AFC North. You know, when the AFC North was supposed to be so great. The AFC West, only won back-to-back road games, too, this season for the Raiders, which is pretty good.
Yeah. The head coaches in that division, Andy Reid, Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton, Pete Carroll, as good as you will find. Let's go to the NFC now, the team that missed the playoffs most likely to get in. Find out next.
We're not saying every SportsGrid listener is a legend, but you might start thinking about who's going to play you in the movie.
Just saying.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
With your news flash, I'm Trey Westerberg. This update brought to you by Fidelity. President Donald Trump's administration sued the California Department of Education for allowing transgender girls to compete on girls' sports teams, alleging the policy violates federal law. The lawsuit filed by the Justice Department says California's transgender athlete policies violate Title IX. The department says California's rules, quote, are not only illegal and unfair, but also demeaning, signaling to girls that their opportunities and achievements are secondary to accommodating boys. The U.S. is having its worst year for measles spread in more than 3 decades, with a total of 1,288 cases nationally and another 6 months to go in 2025. The CDC said that the national case count surpassed 2019 when there were 1,274 cases for the year, and the country almost lost its status as having eliminated the vaccine-preventable illness. That could happen this year if the virus has nonstop spread for 12 months. I'm Trey Westerberg with your news flash.
This summer with Kohl's, you can rack up the compliments like, where'd you get that dress? Tell me all your makeup secrets. Or, ooh, my husband needs that polo in every color. Because Kohl's has what you need. Cute dresses, Sephora essentials, stylish polos, comfy kids clothes, and more. Plus, take 20% off some of your faves. Yup, cue the compliments with Kohl's. Select styles, some exclusions apply. Offer ends July 20th. Coupons and Kohl's Cash do not apply to Sephora. See store or Kohls.com for details.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds. With that kind of money, you could go big time and skip the regular line at the airport and pay for speedy security. Imagine not having to quickly unpack and pack at the place you already came packed to. And wearing your shoes the whole time you're there? You can't put a price on that kind of luxury. Well, actually you can, and you paid for it. Switch to Progressive and you could save big time for speedy security. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states. Potential savings will vary.
Remember when you were thankful you could just get AM and FM?
Things have progressed.
Now even an app on your phone can give you a 21st century thrill with that little drop of heaven called
the deposit notification.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. We have looked at playoff teams from a year ago, those wild card teams that we expect to be back, that we think more than likely could miss out on a playoff spot this time around in 2025. in some teams that did not make the postseason last year that could very well do that here in the 2025 NFL season. We just focused on the AFC, Scott. Let's turn our attention to the NFC. And much like the Bengals in the AFC, at least from expectation and the odds, there is a clear answer in the NFC for a team that missed out on the playoffs last year that we expect to be back. It's the San Francisco 49ers, who at a minus 194 price have the second best number out of every team, all 16 in the NFC, the second best price to see the playoffs this upcoming year, only behind the Philadelphia Eagles, even a better price at minus 194 for the Niners to see the playoffs than that of the Detroit Lions at minus 188. Is it justified? That's what I'll ask you in just a moment. Is it understood? Perhaps prior to last year and a 6-win season marred by significant injury basically to every single significant player on San Francisco's roster. In the previous 5 seasons, San Francisco had reached the NFC Championship game 4 times. They had reached the Super Bowl twice. Did they lose to the same opponent both times in Kansas City? Yes, but they have been a very consistently good team in the NFC, Scott, outside of last year marred by injury.
Yeah, I tell you what, the best thing San Fran has going for them, Ben, is their schedule in a sort of way. Good news, bad news. I'll start with the good news, right? Is Detroit on there? No. Is Philadelphia on there? No. Is Buffalo on there? No. Is Cincinnati on there? No. Is Kansas City on there, Scott? No. They don't play anybody as far as you give me the top 5-6 teams in the NFL, right? That's probably a consensus of who they are. They don't play any of them. It's amazing. So what's the bad news? The bad news is they have 6 of their first 9 games on the road. They got 3 sets. Remember I told you I forget who it was, only had 1 set, right? They have 3 sets of back-to-back games. That's not easy, especially when you're in San Francisco and one of the games is in Los Angeles. That's not too bad, but the following week they're playing at Tampa Bay. One is at Houston, and then the next one is at the Giants. Would they go back home from Houston, versus flying right to New York? I'm not sure. Yeah. They probably, I don't know. It's kind of weird, right? So it's not like it's back-to-back, Seattle and the LA Chargers, and they'll just fly home. Not that big a deal. So for that standpoint, it's difficult. But I'm not buying in, even though it is an easy schedule. I'm not. I think the pendulum has flipped on them. I really do. They lose all their wide receiver. Debo leaves. Christian McCaffrey, we saw him last year. He finally got hurt after being healthy for a couple of years. He's an injury waiting to happen. They're a year older. I'm not a Brock Purdy. I'm not a basher of him, but I wouldn't have given him 40, 45, whatever it was, $50 million and said, here are the keys to the franchise. I just wouldn't have. I would have moved on. So I don't think they make the playoffs this year. I would not be voting on them to get in.
Scott, there's a lot of changes for San Francisco, and then also an offseason that was not nearly as tumultuous as last year. Brandon Ayuk's large holdout. Trent Williams missed the start of training camp looking for a new deal as well, but there are still some issues for the 49ers. Yeah, Brock Purdy got paid. Same with George Kittle. Same with Fred Warner. But you've got Brandon Ayuk now, who got paid last year, didn't look great, and then tore his ACL. He is expected back at some point in 2025. Ricky Pearsall, of course, that unfortunate situation, shot while shopping in the offseason last year, came back, returned, played, was okay, still kind of finding his footing in the NFL. You lose Deebo Samuel, who is maybe not the Deebo Samuel of 2021 or 2022 in your offense last year, but still a consistent piece. He's now in Washington. Christian McCaffrey, who had been largely healthy for his first 2 years in San Francisco, anything but. And Achilles tendonitis is never a good sounding thing by any means. I still think there are a lot of questions. Or do I think the 49ers will be a playoff team this year? Yeah. Do I think San Francisco deserves having the second best price out of any of the 16 teams in that conference to reach the postseason? That's kind of where I draw the line. They get Robert Saleh back as the defensive coordinator. Of course, after he was fired last year by the Jets, that's some consistency and a very sharp defensive mind back there calling the plays for the 49ers. But they lose a couple of pieces up front in Javon Kinlaw and Javon Hargrave, who've kind of been the anchor of the interior of their D-line. Again, I do think San Francisco probably gets back to the mean of the last 5-6 years. 10, 11 wins, playoff spot more than likely. I'd pick the Rams to win the division. And so the Niners at a minus 194 price to see the playoffs, a little bit too steep for my blood.
Yeah, I'd go the other way. I really would. What do you get? About probably plus 130, 140 or so for them not to make the playoffs. Nowadays with these monster VIGs. Their over-under is 10.5. They got to go 11-6. You know, man, I just wish they didn't have that schedule. That schedule is so easy. I mean, it's just so easy. But I don't think they're going to go 11-6. You know, they got the one less home game being in the NFC, as obviously all NFC teams do. But still, just you throw that out there. Are they going to really be the team that can go on the road like they used to and just be able to win these road games hands down? I don't think so. I really don't. So if I definitely would be betting don't make the playoffs, and you're getting plus money on that, so that's pretty good. And then if I really had to, I'd probably go under. I'll take the chance that my evaluation of them is that they're not good, and I'll just throw out the schedule and just hope that some of these teams that we expect to be bad are actually going to be surprisingly good, and that'll pose a little bit more of a threat than what it looks like right now on paper. So under 10.5.
Scott, we mentioned the Warren Sharp numbers, strength of schedule-wise, based on projected opponent win totals, all that good stuff. The Niners, according to Sharp, have the easiest schedule in the National Football League, as you alluded to, because of some of the teams they do not have. I guess it is part of the silver lining of being an underperforming team now playing a last-placed schedule. Scott, last year was the first year in a while, if I'm not mistaken, we didn't have a team finish last in the division the year prior and win said division the following year, right?
You know what? I'll answer that definitively when we come back. I'm trying to think. Did we have anybody? Not Baltimore, not Buffalo, Houston, Kansas City? No. I'm looking at them now. No.
Yeah.
That's right.
So we'll talk about that next. The Niners would be a likely choice. More on FFC next.
Luck is winning the lottery. Strategy is settling your divorce before cashing in the tickets.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channel dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and Sirius XM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Moneyline at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Imagine combining the exciting investment opportunity of cryptocurrencies with the power of artificial intelligence to maximize your IRA, 401k, or other investment funds. Listen, if you're looking for ways to accelerate your retirement growth, Block Trust IRA has market-leading strategies and solutions for all levels of investors, from $1,000 to millions. And they partner with Bitcoin Magazine's #1 crypto trading fund in the world to maximize your returns. Plus, their team of IRA specialists is here to help you roll over your IRA or qualified retirement account to the new world of cryptocurrency investments. So make this free call right now to set up your account and learn more.
800-434-5313. 800-434-5313. 800-434-5313. That's 800-434-5313.
It's stark but true.
You can either listen to SportsGrid for strategies, odds, and more, or you can pay your bills by digging in your couch cushions for change.
Just be sure to wear gloves.
Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Scott and I did confirm during the break that last year in 2024, we did not see a team, which has been a long-standing trend and something very likely in the NFL. We did not see a team who finished last in 2023 win a division in 2024. But, Scott, we were discussing the 49ers, who, of course, are a likely test case for that trend in 2025. The Niners at 6-11 finished in the cellar of the NFC West. Could be a very likely team to finish atop the division. You kind of look around the rest of our divisions in football last year. Outside of that, not many spots that seem all that likely. Scott, just before we talk quickly on Deion Sanders' comments at Big 12 Media Days, we talked about surprise teams in the AFC. You talked about the Jags. Are there any potential surprising teams in the NFC who missed out on the playoffs that could get back there in 2025?
Yeah. By the way, what we did also have last year, though, is 35 straight years now of 4 new teams making the playoffs that didn't make it the year before. Another one of those goofy things that we always like to talk about. Washington, Minnesota, Chargers, and Denver didn't make it 2 years ago, made it last year. So I love how those things all kind of work themselves out. The other NFC, I'm going to throw a real crazy one at you, Ben. I'm going to go, believe it or not, New York Giants.
Wow.
I'm gonna buy into Russell Wilson having a little life left in him. You know, he played well first half of the season for Pittsburgh. Then I think the schedule kind of caught up with him and the team as a whole. His numbers weren't that bad. I'm going to buy in. If he doesn't work out, then maybe Dart gets thrown in there. Maybe Jameis Winston gets thrown in there. But, defensively, they really should be one of the better defenses in the NFL. I mean, when you look at who they have on that defense and where they, got these guys from as far as first and second round draft choices, it is littered with first and second round picks. I mean, they really should have a terrific defense.
For sure.
So, if you get 17 to 20 points a game out of the offense, and, you should be able to, I think the Giants are in a position to be one of those real surprise teams like we saw out of Washington last year and out of Houston 2 years ago. So how about the New York Giants?
That would be a deep cut, Scott. There is no doubt. But the defense should be really good. And we know that Brian Daboll and Joe Shane will be coaching and front officing for their jobs the year following in 2026. It might be a recipe for a tank type of season, or at least one we don't expect to be great. I don't think the Giants throw in the towel at any point. The other team I would highlight, maybe not necessarily a surprise, at least based on the grandeur and the aura of this franchise, but the Cowboys, win total is 7.5 this year. The over has the juice. It was the first win total bet I made to the over if Dak Prescott is healthy, even if I question Brian Schottenheimer. Every year that Dak has been healthy for the 7 of his 9 in the NFL, they have won at least 8 games. 5 of those 7, they have won double-digit games. Cowboys to do anything of worth, if they actually do make the postseason, very different conversation. But in terms of getting there, I'll say maybe the Cowboys can be a playoff team once again. Speaking of Dallas, Scott, Big 12 Media Days at the Cowboys practice home in Frisco the last few days. And Deion Sanders at the mic yesterday asked about his health that has been a concern, said, quote, "I'm already back. I'm here today. I'm handling my responsibilities. So I look forward to it. I can't wait." You got to understand some of the young players I haven't even met yet. I'm so excited about that. Well, fall camp starts very soon. And Deion asked about the future of college football. He said, quote, "I wish there was a salary cap. Like the top of line players make this. And if you're not that type of guy, you're not going to make that. That's what the NFL does," end quote. I'm not so sure we'll see slotted salary values, Scott, even in the revenue sharing system and era we are now in. But that idea of a cap, a salary cap, is one that I think many coaches and administrators around college football desire.
Yeah, that's the theme. What I was watching yesterday with the 8 coaches. They did 8 yesterday, 8 today, or 8 2 days ago, and then 8 yesterday.
Yeah.
That was the central. They all kind of said that. Get a cap. This way we know how much we can spend versus certain teams. As Deion pointed out, the same teams are going to be champions every single year because they're going to spend the most money. But that, a little message to Deion, that's been the case. Like you go back to 85, 75, 95, 2000. It's the same 10 teams, whether they were paying these guys or not, under the table. But college football has not changed in the last 50 years. It just had. It's the same 10 teams. It's Ohio State, it's Michigan, it's Alabama. I was a little disappointed, though. They didn't drill him on anything. They didn't ask a question about his son. Like, nothing. It was real cupcake yesterday. Very disappointing.
Yeah, Deion didn't have all that much to say. Did bring both of his quarterbacks, though. The transfer Caden Salter and the true freshman Juju Lewis with him to Dallas, saying both guys could start this upcoming season. That does it for Football Full Circle. We'll talk to you tomorrow, noon Eastern on SportsGrid Radio.
You found the advantage for gaming, odds, and more. But we call it the winning edge for short. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.